Throughout history, science has pushed boundaries. But sometimes, those boundaries push back. From head transplants to radioactive breakfast cereal, these experiments aren't just bizarre, they really happened. Welcome to Brainrot Digest. Let's dive into 10 of the strangest scientific studies ever conducted, all 100% real. But first, don't forget to like and subscribe with notifications on for even more spooky stories every week. 1. The Soviet dog head experiment. In 1940, Soviet scientists Sergei Brukhonenko and Boris Levinskovsky claimed they could keep a severed dog's head alive using a primitive heart-lung machine. Footage of the experiment, now infamous, shows the head reacting to light and sound. The dog blinks. Its tongue lolls. It even licks its nose. The researchers showcased this to promote their medical device, the autojector. But many argue the ethics of the experiment were horrifying. Some believe the footage was staged, but others insist it's authentic. While it didn't lead to eternal life, the experiment laid groundwork for later heart-lung machines used in human surgery. Still, it raises one haunting question. Did the dog know it was dead? 2. Project MKUltra. In the 1950s and 60s, the CIA ran a mind control program called MKUltra. Their goal? See if LSD, hypnosis, and electroshock therapy could manipulate behavior, or even create Manchurian candidate assassins. The agency dosed hundreds of people, often without consent. Some subjects were prisoners. Others were unwitting hospital patients. One man, Frank Olson, allegedly jumped from a window after being secretly dosed. His death is still debated: suicide or cover-up? MKUltra included bizarre offshoots like Operation Midnight Climax, where sex workers dosed clients with LSD in CIA-controlled safehouses. Hidden cameras recorded everything. The full scope of the program was only revealed in the 1970s after a Senate investigation. But most records had already been destroyed. What remains is a paranoid legacy and a terrifying truth. At one point, the US government believed mind control might be real, and they were willing to break every rule to find out. 3. The Stanford Prison Experiment. In 1971, psychologist Philip Zimbardo simulated a prison in the basement of Stanford University. Volunteers were randomly assigned to be guards or inmates. The experiment was meant to last 2 weeks. It lasted 6 days. Guards quickly became abusive, yelling, humiliating, even depriving inmates of sleep and hygiene. Prisoners suffered emotional breakdowns. One participant, number 8612, had to be removed after screaming uncontrollably. Zimbardo, acting as the prison warden, let it spiral, until an outside observer demanded it be shut down. The experiment became legendary, cited as proof that situational power corrupts. But later investigations revealed inconsistencies. Zimbardo may have coached the guards. The conditions weren't as spontaneous as claimed. Still, the footage remains disturbing. Real emotions. Real cruelty. Real people forgetting it was all just pretend. 4. Japan's Unit 731. During World War II, Japan's secret Unit 731 conducted human experiments in Manchuria, under the guise of disease research. Led by General Shiro Ishii, they infected prisoners with plague, frostbit limbs to study decay, and performed vivisections without anesthesia. Victims were called logs. They tested biological weapons by dropping infected fleas over villages. Thousands died. And after the war, many Unit 731 members were granted immunity by the US in exchange for their data. For decades, Japan denied the unit's existence. Only in recent years has the truth emerged, often through survivors' testimonies. The scale was horrific. The science was twisted. And the legacy is one of silence and shame. 5. The Monster Study. In 1939, researchers at the University of Iowa conducted a speech experiment on orphans. Half the children received positive speech therapy. The other half, negative. The goal was to study the origins of stuttering. But those in the negative group were belittled, corrected harshly, and discouraged from speaking. Some children who didn't stutter before developed speech problems afterward. Others grew up with lifelong anxiety. The experiment was kept secret for decades and later dubbed the Monster Study. One of the researchers, Mary Tudor, expressed regret, but the harm had already been done. It's a case where the pursuit of knowledge turned children into lab rats, and their voices paid the price. Before we move on to our next 5 stories, what are some of the more unhinged science experiments you've heard of? Leave a comment and tell us about it. 6. The Milgram Obedience Experiment. How far would you go just because someone told you to? In 1961, psychologist Stanley Milgram recruited volunteers to teach another person using electric shocks. The shocks were fake, but the learner's screams were recorded. Participants were told to increase the voltage with each wrong answer. Many protested, but when the authority figure insisted, most obeyed. Some went all the way to 450 volts, a level marked 30 in danger. Milgram was testing obedience to authority, particularly in the wake of the Holocaust. The results were disturbing. Ordinary people were willing to harm others just because they were told to. The experiment has been replicated many times, with similar results. Human nature, it seems, can be shockingly compliant. 7. NASA's Space Dolphin Experiment. In the 1960s, neuroscientist John C. Lilly was funded by NASA to study dolphin communication. His idea? Teach dolphins English. He flooded a house with water and had a young woman named Margaret Levat live with a dolphin named Peter. They interacted constantly. But when Peter became sexually frustrated, Levat was instructed to relieve him manually, to prevent distraction. The story became infamous. But behind the headlines was a serious scientific effort. That took a deeply weird turn. Eventually, the project lost funding. Peter was moved to a tank where he became depressed, and eventually died. Lovat said Peter died of a broken heart. 8. Project Pigeon. During World War II, famed behaviorist B.F. Skinner had an idea to help the Allies train pigeons to guide missiles. Yes, real pigeons. Inside the nose cone of a bomb. The birds were trained to peck at a screen showing the target. If the target drifted, the pigeons would adjust their pecking to steer it back. It worked surprisingly well in tests. But the military didn't trust the idea. It was shelved, even though the pigeons outperformed some early guidance systems. Skinner insisted it could have worked. Today, it's remembered as one of the most bizarre, and oddly effective, experiments in military science. Just imagine, a flock of feathered bomb technicians changing the course of war. 9. Human radiation experiments. Between the 1940s and 70s, U.S. scientists conducted hundreds of secret radiation experiments on unsuspecting people, many of them poor, sick, or institutionalized. They injected plutonium into hospital patients, fed radioactive oatmeal to children at a Massachusetts school, exposed soldiers and prisoners to radiation without proper protection. The experiments aimed to understand the effects of radiation exposure. But they were done without consent. When the truth emerged in the 1990s, it caused public outrage. President Clinton formally apologized, calling it a betrayal of trust. Science may seek answers. But sometimes, the questions come at a terrible cost. 10. The cat telephone. In 1929, scientists Ernest Glenn Weaver and Charles Bray wanted to understand how hearing worked. So they turned a live cat into a telephone. They sedated the cat, exposed its auditory nerve, and placed electrodes. When they spoke into the cat's ear, the sound traveled through the wire into a receiver, where it was faintly heard on the other end. It was a working cat telephone. Though the experiment contributed to early research in cochlear implants, the ethics are stomach-turning by today's standards. The cat was later euthanized. It's a reminder that some scientific breakthroughs have unsettling origins, and not all curiosity is kind. Science has changed the world, but not always for the better. These experiments remind us that progress can be brilliant, terrifying, and sometimes deeply twisted. If this gave you chills, don't forget to like, subscribe, and let us know which one disturbed you the most. This has been Brainrot Digest. Stay curious, but maybe don't volunteer for any clinical trials.